Happy New Year, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. This is going to be an exciting year. I think a ton of things are going to be happening. A ton of tech is coming out. We're going to be talking a lot. I'm going to be talking a bunch more nonsense. And at the beginning of every year, you already know we have to do all these different SWIs, still worth it videos. And the first one I want to hit on is the iPhone 6s. Now, I'm going to probably start off with the most popular SWIs of 2019 and work backwards. There's no point in doing videos that nobody's going to watch, so I'm going to be doing the most popular phones that I reviewed and then keep it going for 2020, updating them as they need to be. Now this video, if you're watching this like early 2020 to like mid 2020, it's probably going to be relevant, but it's going to be relevant the whole entire year. So I'm going to try to like future cast it in case you want to go get the phone later, but I will be updating this mid 2020 and also late 2020 as I usually do. So starting off with the iPhone 6s, this phone came out in 2015, and looking around the body, I mean, you can probably see, as I've stated before, it's a pretty dated design, especially when we consider the phones that we have now and even the phones that came out in 2019, even late 2019. You can get a very, very compelling, great phone for a couple $100s, and it, especially with the Galaxy A series devices, those phones really look better than the iPhone 6s, which, I hate to say it, but the iPhone 6s is definitely starting to show its age in terms of design. It probably was doing it early 2019 too, but I kind of wanted to give it the benefit of the doubt. With the iPhone 6s right now, it's definitely kind of showing its age, but the design isn't everything. It's just a small part, but some people might, be persuaded by that one way or another. It does have a 4.7-inch screen on the front. It is 750 by 1334 pixels, and it's not a bad panel. I'll be completely honest, even though it is IPS, it's not an OLED or anything. I honestly can't really hate on it too much, especially when I look at like an iPhone 10 or iPhone 11 panel. I don't really look at the 6s panel and be like, oh my god, this panel is so bad. I honestly don't even look at the iPhone SE's panel like that either. So that's kind of a decent thing going for the 6s. You do have a pretty decent screen for a phone that you're probably paying for like $80 for, $100 for, even less than that. You do have 3D Touch or Force Touch as well, which they actually took out for all of the new iPhones that came out this year or 2019. So for those of you who didn't even realize that, yeah, they took it away, which is pretty sad, but it is what it is. Great thing is you have the lightning port at the bottom as well as a headphone jack, which is really cool. Some people, they still prefer having a physical headphone jack there. They do not want to switch over, which I'll be honest, I was like you too. I didn't want to switch over, but I did it, and it's really not even that big of a deal anymore. So it is what it is. On the back, single camera setup, and in terms of the overall design, like I said, familiar design, we all know what it looks like. It's starting to show its age for sure. Like I stated, it probably showed its age last year, but now because of all these different phones and all these budget phones becoming more bezel-less, this phone is starting to show its age. That's probably the best way I can put it. Now, in terms of software support, this is where things get a little bit tricky, and I don't really know which way to go about doing it. But the best way I can say is that, it started with iOS 9. This is technically the oldest iPhone that is on its current software. So the iPhone SE, iPhone 6s, these phones all had the A9 chip, and these are the oldest iPhones that are supported for the iOS 13 update. Now, there could potentially be a way that it will get the next version of iOS. I don't think so, though, just based off the previous, way Apple has released software. And another reason is because I think the iPhone 7 might get an extra year of support, and it really wouldn't make too much sense for Apple to go push an update and then for one phone and then push the same exact update for the next phone. For example, if the iPhone 6s were to get the second version of iOS 14, will that mean the iPhone 7 will also get an extra version? Will get iOS 16? I don't know. I'm pretty sure the iPhone 7 is going to be getting additional support because of the A10 chip that was in the iPod Touch 7. But the iPhone 6s, there's really not too many crazy devices that have the A9 chip except that iPad Pro, the first gen, and I think they're going to probably cut software support for that too. I don't really know, but if I had to guess it, I would probably say it's going to not get iOS 14, which is sad to say. But recently, within the last couple months, when iOS 13 officially came out, we saw that Apple is starting to switch over to a support kind of update. So security update for about a year. So they'll push full OS updates for a while, and then they'll push security updates for a year, which so far that's what they've been doing. Maybe they'll do it, maybe they won't do it for the 6s, but that would still be a really cool thing. So you still have a lot of support for it up until June of this year, and then we'll see whether it's getting iOS 14 or not. If it does, that's awesome. If it doesn't, you will probably still get security updates for another year or so on top of that. So, it's nothing too crazy. Now that kind of covers up everything in terms of the outside and in terms of software. Now let's go and hit on the performance. This thing, like I said, has the Apple A9 chip, has a dual core CPU, and there's like 20 different models of this thing, and there's 2 gigabytes of RAM on all those models. So you have a 16, 32, 64, and 128 gigabyte variant. All those have 2 gigabytes of RAM. And what I can tell you about the performance is that, you know what? Early last year, I said it was a pretty good performing phone, and this year, I still think it. I think it's a pretty good performing phone for the price that you're paying for. Now, what's crazy is I've done so many comparisons against the 6S to so many different phones. So many different phones I compared it to, and I saw that yes, the newer iPhones like the iPhone XS and XR and 11 and 11 Pro, those iPhones are faster at the end of the day. Like, I'm pretty sure all of them were faster. There were some cases I think where the 6S was just a tad bit faster, but if I were going day to day and using my 6S and, you know, going to the store and coming back and using it while I'm there and being in class and using it, I would not notice that phone being slow for my needs. The only reasons I know that it's slow is because I have these iPhones and I compare it to those iPhones. So if I wasn't comparing them side by side every day, I probably wouldn't notice that big of a difference, to be real with you guys, you know? So with the iPhone 6S, I mean, I really don't think it's that bad performing of a phone. Is it the best? No, it's obviously slow sometimes. It has only 2 gigabytes of RAM, which, you know, RAM management isn't that great. But for a vast majority of people, I think the performance, you know, will definitely get you from point A to point B. Whether you're, you know, whatever you're doing with it's going to be fine. Performance in games isn't that bad either. Whether you're playing a super, you know, low intensive game or a pretty high intensive game, it can handle it for the most part. Thinking in the future for 2020, I want to say iOS 13 will get better in terms of support. Obviously, this is January 1st. I don't really know what iOS 13 is going to be by the time June comes around. But if I had to say it, I think Apple's going to be focusing down on fixing the bugs that's within iOS 13. There's a lot of RAM management issues and a lot of performance issues within iOS 13 right now. So I think Apple can go ahead and fix those by the time, you know, it ends off, and the iPhone 6S will be in a better spot at the end of it. So in terms of performance, for the price point and for the age of this phone, I think it's good. I don't think it's a bad performing phone at all. Now, hitting on the camera, this is not a full camera review. I'm debating on dropping one on my second channel. I might do it, I might not, I don't know. But this thing has a single 12 megapixel camera on the back. Luckily for you, it can shoot 4K videos at up to 30 frames per second, which is really, really cool, and I like that a lot. You can still do 1080p at 120 and all that, and I think the overall camera is really, really good for the price. I think this is really one of the best iPhone cameras that were released during its price range, or its, you know, day and its price range. Like I said, this was the first iPhone to bring 4K, the first iPhone to bring 12 megapixel sensors, and we've only seen 12 megapixel sensors since then. And if you remember recently, I did a camera comparison between the 6S and the iPhone 11. I might have done one between the 11 Pro too, but the 6S and the iPhone 11. And yeah, overall, I think the 11 won. I mean, that's pretty obvious. It has more camera features. You can record even 4K at the front camera, but I think the 6S was still pretty close, man. Like, it wasn't really too far off. Like, obviously the 11 won, but if I had to say it, I don't think the iPhone 6S was that far behind. So in terms of the camera, I think you'll be set. I don't think you're going to be complaining too much about it. You have a 5 megapixel front facing camera, and I don't think anybody's really going to be complaining about the camera if you own this phone, because you understand it's not the newest phone. If you want to get a better camera, go for an iPhone like 8 Plus or go for an iPhone 10 or 10s or whatever. So that's kind of the way I look at things. So the camera, I think it's a plus point for me. I think it's a pretty highlight of this phone. Now, ending it off with the battery life, this thing has a 1715 mAh battery. Now, there's two sides to look at this, okay? One way is, because this phone is old, the battery has degraded a lot. Even when it was released, it didn't really have the best battery life, and since then, the battery life and health has only gotten down. So that's kind of like a negative thing about this phone, but a positive thing is that this phone is pretty easy to replace your own parts with. If you get a battery from eBay and replace it yourself, it's very, very easy to do that, so it's really not that big of a deal. So if you're in that camp, I would probably tell you, like, yes, you can go ahead and, you know, buy a phone, and it's probably going to degrade battery life health really, really fast if it hasn't already, but you can always replace it yourself and go and like buy a $15 battery on eBay and replace yourself pretty easily. I've done it a couple of times, and I don't even like mess with phones that often. So if I can do it, I'm sure you can do it too. And now there's two big changes that I want to hit on with the 6S specifically that happened recently. Now, the one, parts for this phone have only gotten cheaper and cheaper. Like I stated with the battery thing, if you break the screen, if you break the camera, if you break whatever, you can go and replace those things super easily. It does not take a lot of money to go and replace those things. So that's a huge highlight versus if you broke your screen on your iPhone 11, that would be a huge disadvantage. But the biggest thing and the biggest change that happened since last year, and it really only happened like the last couple months, is the check rain jailbreak. So an indefinite unpatchable jailbreak came out for the iPhone 6S to the iPhone 10. It actually started with the iPhone 5S. you can jailbreak any version of OS that your iPhone 6s is on and get all those tweaks, all those everything. And I think that's a humongous advantage for this phone, honestly. I mean, the 6s is still a good phone, but when you jailbreak it, it turns it to another level. That's definitely one of the highlights of this phone, and honestly, that's why I think this phone is still worth it. The checkra1n jailbreak in and of itself is a huge highlight of this phone. Whether you want to do it or not, whether you jailbreak it or not, having that option is a humongous thing for a lot of people. And I think at the end of it, I think the iPhone 6s is still worth it in 2020, going into about mid 2020, maybe even late 2020, who knows. I use this phone every day. I think it's a really good phone at the end of it, and even though it has some weird things here, like the battery sometimes isn't that great, the performance isn't that great, it looks a little old, I still think it checks a lot of boxes for a majority of people out there. So if you're in the market for a used phone or whatever, definitely pick up a 6s, you won't regret it. I'll go ahead and find the cheapest iPhone 6s on Amazon, and I'll link it straight down in the description below so you guys can get it from there and help support the channel at the same time. But that is pretty much it. If you guys have any other questions or anything, leave it down in the comment section as well. Hit that like button, that will mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it means so much if you guys can hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel, all those links are linked down below. I'd really appreciate if you guys could check it out. But more importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.